Hey guys, I'm Granular Sumo, and today I'm gonna show you how I made this, I guess. It's not gonna be a tutorial as much as like a walkthrough kind of thing, because I spent a while sort of messing around with sounds and things to come up with what I ended up with there. But I'll try and sort of show you everything that, like the process that I went through to make it. So like I started off with just I'll just turn these off quickly. Leave them like that. So I started off with just just this operator, and I just drew out an E. When I do this kind of stuff, I pretty much always just start with one note and then like make it more complicated later on, because I go through, like, I ended up resampling it and things anyway. So I basically just started off with a sine wave, and then added some of this in, like just drew a few random like harmonics or whatever into this next oscillator and fed that in a little bit. There was some automation on this as well, you can see it there. And then I did the same here and just drew in a few more harmonics. So like if I yeah, like, so with this, I'll just turn these off. So that's with the first oscillator. And then that's what it sounded like with these harmonics as well. Like, it's quite subtle, you can't really hear much of a difference, but it adds a little bit more character, I think. Then what I did was I turned the tone all the way up to 100%, because I think by default it starts at 70% or something, and it basically just like added some more high frequency in there, because it's quite like a low frequency noise. Then what I did was I turned the spread up a little bit, not by much, because it kind of just muddied up the sound when I added too much in, so I just left it at about 14%, and then I'm pretty sure that's all I did in the operator. Yeah, it looks like that was everything that I did there. Then what I did was I made 3 chains in this audio effect rack with auto filters, a bandpass on one of them, and I set that to this macro knob. Same with these 2 notch filters, but what I did was I set the Q value to 2.06 on both of them, but what I did was I offset one of the notches slightly, so this one is basically like right on top of the bandpass filter, but then this one is slightly like slightly higher frequency basically, so like there's a bit of space in between them, so it adds a bit more characteristics. And then I just compressed it loads basically, and I ended up with this sound. Sounds pretty weird at this point, but then I basically rendered it out to audio here. I put an EQ on it and just cut out the really low frequencies, because it was just a bit, when I did some more filtering and things and more compression, it just got really like muddy, so I just cut them out. Then I put some chorus on it with a fairly low dry wet, That's pretty much all that was there. Then I did some more random automation with high pass, like just to give it some more like movement and things, and a low pass which I used to sort of make the movement that was already in it a bit more subtle, if that makes any sense. And I compressed it even more. So at this point it sounded like this. Pretty like messy at this point. Then what I did was, you can ignore this, I literally just bounced it out to audio, and this is just the audio clip that sort of came out of all this automation here. So then what I did was these two samplers are pretty much the same. The only difference is one of them I set the pitch bend range to 24 semitones, and the other one I just left it at the default value. So basically what I did was I just sort of drew out some notes that I thought kind of worked, and in here, okay, so I set the volume to around 0 dB because at default it's set to like -12 or something. I turned this wave shaper on and turned it to soft clipping, and set the amount to 78. That can depend on what kind of sound you're using though. Like sometimes it sounds better with these different settings. The sine shaper and the hard shaper sound quite cool sometimes as well, but I left it on the soft shaper for this one because I felt like it didn't need like too much grit to it. Then what I did was I turned this pitch envelope on and set it to 23 semitones apparently, plus 23 semitones. Turn the decay to about 206 milliseconds. That gives it like a sort of percussive attack at the start of the note. If you can hear that, like if that's it with hardly any decay, and then like if you do it, like it sort of ends up being a bit of like a faller kind of thing, but like in between, like in like the midway sort of point, it has like a percussive element to it. So I set it to about 206 because I thought that sounded good. Then what I did was I did some FM automation with this. I turned the type to triangle and turned the coarse up to 10. And like I'm pretty sure the default, basically I did some automation with it, but I set it so that it was like defaulting at -4 dB, -24 dB, so like it had some of the triangle wave being fed into it anyway. But then like when I wanted to do these more like, basically like some parts I just wanted some more triangle wave being fed into it because kind of made it sound a bit cooler. And I basically just found like I turned the loop mode onto the sustain mode onto this this setting, so it just like plays it through over and over again and doesn't reverse it, and just found a part that I liked and set it to loop through from there. See what's happening there. It's just like looping through this little section. Sometimes I use like different parts to like get different like different textures and things out of the sample that I have, and other times I just like chop it up and use different parts for like different kind of sounds, if that makes any sense. And I'm pretty sure that's all that I did in the sampler. Like, this sampler is exactly the same, it's just the only difference is I set the pitch bend range to plus 24 semitones instead. So at this point I ended up with this. Okay. So then basically what I did here was I just started by making like this kind of glitch hoppy kind of swung out drum beat. I'm not really going to go into any detail about how I did that in this video. I'll make another video about like arranging things like that, and like I'm not the best at mixing down my drums and things, but like I know a fair bit about arrangement. I'd say I'm quite a lot better at arrangement than I am at like the mix down and things. So basically what I did then was I just rendered all of this bass stuff here out into like one audio track, one audio clip. Oh, actually, I forgot to mention before I rendered it out, I like had it sitting over. I had these sitting over these drums, and I basically oh yeah, I also forgot to mention that I had saturator. Like, this was just to add a bit more, like a little bit more distortion to it. Like you could hardly even, I don't know. Basically, like without the saturator, it sounds like this. With it, it sounds like this. Just added a bit more high end, and I basically just messed with the depth a little bit, like hardly anything though. Set the frequency to 1.06 kilohertz and turn the bass down a bit. I'm not entirely sure what that does, apparently. Okay, so it says this determines how much the saturator effect will be reduced or increased for very low frequencies. So I guess it just like stops the saturator from, well, the way that I've set it up, it just like stops the saturator from affecting the low frequencies a bit, I guess. So I also, like, on these parts here, if you can hear it, like in this part there's just some subtle filtering, which is basically just the same thing again with the 2-notch filters and the bandpass. I did it on this clip as well. Like, that's why this one has like more filter movement. That's just like a pitch bend combined with like really exaggerated filter movement with this bandpass and notch setup thing. But yeah, basically what I did then was I had all of this like over the top of these drums, and I basically just did some sidechain compression before I bounced it out. I just had like this little kick sample that I had it turned off, and I just used it as like a signal for the sidechain. So like whenever this sample, whenever it like, basically whenever this sample played, it would just like pull some of the bass sound out of the mix, so it didn't like over, like, I can't think of the right word, like basically just so it like knock the volume out of the bass while the drums were being played, so you could hear the drums more like through the mix, if that makes any sense. Could have explained that way better, but I'm not doing very good at explaining myself, apparently. So then all I did was I just started like chopping it up. I didn't really change the arrangement all that much. I just sort of cut it a bit to like give it a bit more character. So like this is what it sounded like before I decided to chop it up. And then this is what it sounded like after I chopped it up. So like you can see, I didn't really do that much to it, but I just felt like these parts were kind of more, I think I felt like they needed more separation, and the drums needed to like push through the mix a bit more, and I just wanted to give it a bit more character on this part with these chops, because I felt it got a bit plain and boring sounding, but that's just like my style of music writing, I guess. And I just this last part, I just like copied that first hit over this hit. I just copied that over and put like a really big fade on it. All of these have fades on them, by the way. Like I just sort of did that to accentuate the sidechaining a bit more, give it a bit more room for the drums and things. And yeah, I basically just copied that first hit over, put a really exaggerated fade on it, raised it up an octave, turned it on to the tones warp mode, and then just did like a pitch bend to make this sound. So then that's pretty much all I did to end up with this. So yeah, I hope you found something helpful in that, and hope it wasn't too hard to follow and all that stuff. Yeah, I'll catch you guys later.